I wanted to record something a little bit longer today, something unscripted. I just wanted to take the opportunity to share some thoughts about what 2025 was for Permascaping and what 2026 can be if we do our jobs, if we continue to get it right. You know, at the beginning of 2025, I had done really two big projects through Permascaping. One for Kayla and Aiton in Ahwatukee, and one for Miles and Doris in Scottsdale, Phoenix. Miles and Doris's project was massive, and I learned so much. And one of my biggest lessons that I learned from that job was that there are so many people who know so much more than I do about the various contracting trades, irrigation, building fences, grading, and excavation. I had respect for that work already, but that job gave me a new order of magnitude of respect for what that kind of work really takes. And going into 2025, I decided that I wanted to work pretty exclusively with Clint Culberson, Galaxy Gardens, because I don't know anybody in the Phoenix area who has more experience putting together these permaculture-based landscape projects for homeowners. He's been sharpening his axe for the past 5 years now, really honing his craft on the product. And his partner, Evan Duteau. If you've watched any of our social media content, you've probably seen their faces on the reels that we've posted. Like, you'll hear Clint's voice in some of the final walkthrough videos, on-site consult videos. We're trying to post more of that before and afters. Anyway, all this to say, 2025 was about me really taking a step deeper into the design of these systems, learning how to design a system from the ground up in a completely bare yard, as well as learning how to retrofit an existing property. And it was an amazing year. I learned so much. Permascaping and Galaxy Gardens both had our best years ever. We've established much more consistent processes for the discovery process of understanding where a property owner is at and where they want to go. We've developed a solid, seamless design process. And one of the mistakes that I made towards in the second half of the year was that I tried to hire myself out of the design process much too soon to somebody who I did not set up for success in that role. She was great at what she was able to do, and she lacked a lot of direction from me on everything else. And so we had a bit of a scare towards the end of the year where we weren't bringing in any projects. And on the personal finance side, that really hurt me. It was scary in that way. But I knew that I had what it took to put my hands back on the wheel and start driving again. And I did. I took control of the design phase again, just kind of reinvested myself in it, and was able to, save some projects and deliver some good outcomes for our customers. And now we're starting 2026 with Clint being booked out into April. We have several very large projects and some smaller projects, and we're kind of doing like a big project, little project, big project, little project. Essentially, we're using small projects as an opportunity to experiment with expanding our crew, bringing in additional expertise, additional workers, without compromising the security and the cohesiveness of Clint's core crew. For me and for us, it was about getting a lot of systems in place. There's a lot of systems design, preparing for scale. And what we're really looking for in 2026 is to scale our impact, to be able to have greater impact through the Phoenix area, because this mission that we're on, it's critical. I mean, if you're watching this, you probably are more attuned to the problems that we seek to solve than most people or than many people. Essentially, we live in a world that is getting increasingly dependent on corporate and commercial systems to feed us, to clothe us, to house us, right? All of our basic needs are being met by corporations. Corporations that may not even have a footprint in the country that you live in. And this is a primarily Western experience. I'm not very well traveled yet, so I can't speak to many other parts of the world. When Tatiana, my partner, and I went to Colombia last May, we did experience an interesting, a much more local food system, but we don't see that here. When we think food system, local food system in the Phoenix area, do you know where you can go to get homegrown pomegranates right now? I'm talking grown in somebody's backyard, or commercially grown but on a family-owned farm, something that has not sold out to greater corporate interests. It's extremely hard to find. And you know, when I set out to build this nonprofit, before the word permascaping had even popped into my mind, the nonprofit was Homegrown Foods, and that was and still is the objective. I want you and I to be able to eat year-round from my backyard, from this easement that I'm trying to protect from more investor BS, to be able to eat from your own backyard, from your friends and family's yards, from my friends and family's yards. We don't need to pool all our resources to purchase 100 acres out in the middle of the desert and turn it into an eco-village. That's a beautiful path, don't get me wrong. And there's some incredible eco-villages happening, like Harmony, like Wind Spirit, like Terrasante, that I've been wanting to visit for a couple of years now. But I'm talking about doing this in the city. I'm talking about doing this in spaces like this easement, when you don't have your own land, or you don't have enough land to grow a massive diversity of food, of shade. Little barren patches of dirt like this can be turned into community assets that produce food, that shade, that produce medicine. Look what I'm sitting under. I'm sitting a magical moringa tree. This is medicine, this is food. And wildlife habitat, you know, nectar, like food sources for wildlife, as well as habitat for them. And anyway, our vision for 2026 and beyond is to build the neighborhood-powered food system, the neighborhood-powered rainwater harvesting network. Because when you harvest the rainwater here in this easement, if you look back on videos that we've posted, mainly on social media, on Instagram and TikTok, you'll see that this street right over here, this little dirt road, we get a lake with tens of thousands of gallons of rainwater anytime it rains more than a little bit. And with just a submersible pump and a hose and an extension cord, I've been able to harvest tens of thousands of gallons of that precious rainwater into this basin right here. This is shaped like a natural basin. And this jujube, these moringas, this desert willow, they're all drinking from that, and they're more drought proof because of it. Same thing with these palo verdes. I'm working on a basin over on this side and trying to harvest a lot more rainwater over here. We've done a lot on the property behind the camera that you can't see right now. And And I don't even have any tanks. You know, I'm not storing rainwater above ground right now. But that's also a huge asset for drinking water, for powering an irrigation system. You can actually hook up a tank. You can put a pump, a submersible pump inside of a rainwater tank, hook it up to your irrigation valves, and pump rainwater through your drip irrigation system, even through your sprinklers if you wanted to, you know, make it rain on your grass. By the way, a quick note on grass. We are not against grass. We're not one of these purists that demonizes all lawns at all costs. And I have a bone to pick with the cities that are incentivizing people to get rid of grass more than they necessarily should, because a lot of people are getting rid of grass and replacing their grass with something that's actually going to be hotter, and that's actually going to be less beneficial to the soil microbes. I'm not saying we should keep the amount of grass lawns that we have throughout the Phoenix area. There's massive, just acres of private residential properties, commercial properties, public parks, schools, acres and acres and acres of lawn that does not need to be there. But it should absolutely not be artificial turf, which is poisonous, which is hot as hell. And it should not just be turned into xeriscape with gravel with a few plants that get by in the summertime because they're natives. That's not good enough. See, what a lot of people don't understand, and I realize this is a hell of a tangent, but I'm just going stream of consciousness here. What a lot of people don't understand is that in order for soil to be alive and healthy, it requires a living root system. It's what's called the rhizosphere. The rhizosphere is the process, the world underground where plant roots are exchanging sunlight energy in the form of carbohydrates, in the form of sugars. The plant roots are exchanging that for nitrogen, carbon, phosphorus, potassium, sulfur, all these different nutrients which are being digested and broken down and made bioavailable by the soil microbes. So when we prevent that process from taking place, we actually create soil erosion, we create desertification. So these lawn removal programs are actually contributing to desertification when the people who are collecting their $2 a square foot to remove their grass lawn aren't replacing enough of the living root system in their yard. And that is something I have a huge bone to pick with. And I'm happy to say that I actually connected with somebody in the city of Phoenix who is responsible for recommending xeriscapes. She followed us on Instagram. I reached out to her over DM, found out that this is what she does, and she's really interested in helping to change the conversation away from this sort of like, you know, barren xeriscape model, which like, oh yeah, it uses less water than grass. Sure, but that's not necessarily a good thing for our overall goals. And she understands that. And so we're starting a conversation here in 2026 to present to the city of Phoenix, and this is just the start, to present to the city of Phoenix on the benefits of living root systems. And to get the city of Phoenix, my hope with this relationship, with these presentations that I'm planning, is to help cities that have turf removal programs, grass removal programs, to recognize that all replacement options are not created equal. That replacing your grass lawn with gravel and a few cacti is actually not moving us forward as a city. Phoenix is not better off because of that. What we really need more of in those cases is we need more shade, more upper canopy and lower canopy shade from drought resilient trees like the desert willow, like moringa, like palo verde, like mesquite, like ironwood, like willow acacia in the background over there. There's so many trees that don't require a lot of water to produce a healthy shade canopy, not to mention food. And most of the desert trees, by the way, if you don't know this already, produce edible beans. The mesquite, the palo verde, and the ironwood all produce edible beans that can be eaten at different times of the year in different ways. So anyway, we need more shade canopy. We need more ground cover. Let's talk about weeds. Why do weeds exist? Weeds exist because Mother Nature is trying to stay healthy. This is her immune response. And what do? Look at these weeds that I had to weed whack just to prevent somebody from, saying that I'm not taking care of this space. But these weeds are actually more beneficial to the soil. When we understand how the soil system works, when we understand how nature works, we realize, oh, we actually should leave this mallow. We should leave this dandelion. We should leave this pigweed. Not only are these things going to flower and feed nectar to local pollinator populations, but their active root systems are stimulating soil life. And why is it so important to stimulate soil life? Because healthy living soil actually stores more carbon than the plants themselves by a long shot. And if you haven't watched Kiss the Ground, go watch that documentary. It's incredible. You'll learn about how soil is actually responsible for this major uptick in global temperature. Yes, the Earth goes through cycles of cold, hot, but not at this rate, not at this extreme increase of global heat. And in Kiss the Ground, they talk about, you can actually see satellite imagery of global temperatures and carbon levels in the atmosphere according to the seasons, where we are tilling the soil, destroying these soil structures and releasing ungodly amounts of carbon into the atmosphere. So these weeds are Mother Nature's way of keeping the soil healthy, of keeping the air clean. And once we begin to see weeds as not only that, but also a potential food source, medicine. I mean, everything that's growing in front of me is food, is edible and medicinal. and nobody coming here to bitch about these weeds understands that until I tell them. And the vast majority of landscapers, right, these weed whacker, leaf blower landscapers have no idea. And the ones that do, maybe they just feel stuck. Maybe they're like, there's no way that I'm ever going to be able to convince anybody that this is actually beneficial. But my thesis is that the vast majority of them don't know. So that's what we're trying to do in 2026 and beyond. We did a decent job of it in 2025, but 2026, this is the year of expansion. This is the year of educating cities, educating HOAs. We're doing our first project for an HOA this year. Thank you, Kennedy, who is the board president of this HOA in Scottsdale, and who recognized the opportunity to practice permaculture in the two easements that they have, the big common areas to the north and south of this neighborhood, that are massive watersheds. They receive, I don't know how many millions of gallons of rainwater every year, and they want to harvest that rainwater into the soil there because they recognize that's going to allow their irrigation costs to drop more and more. They want to build soil in these easements because they recognize, they have learned that building soil organic matter, not just this clay dirt that most of us have, but actual soil organic matter in the soil, that it acts like a sponge. And that the higher that organic matter content is in your soil, the lower the irrigation requirements become, because that organic matter is sponging water up when it receives it and releasing it slowly throughout the droughts. So 2026 is gonna be about educating these cities, these HOAs. We're doing a church. We're doing the Gilbert United Methodist Church off of Cooper Road. We're removing a bunch of lawn that doesn't need to be there. They got plenty of lawn left for kiddos to run around in, but we're removing about 2,000 square feet of lawn. We are harvesting over 4,000 square feet of rainwater off of the roof of their chapel and storing that rainwater into basins where this lawn used to be. And we're planting Sonoran Desert native pollinator attracting shrubs and ground cover to rebuild native wildlife habitat and food source. We're also planting trees. We're gonna be shading about 40% of their parking lot with desert native trees. We're gonna be growing a ton of shade, harvesting rainwater. We might even grow food on this property for them. They have a huge, completely under-leveraged natural basin on the backside of their property that currently has grass and trees. And they said every 2 years they've calculated it costs them $17,000. Why not put that money to work? They came to us with this. They brought this up during our design phase for the other parts of their property. They brought this up and they said, what could we do with this? Or maybe I brought it up, but then they brought it back up and said, we want to put budget behind this. And so we're going to plant a food forest back there. We're going to plant a food forest that is going to produce an abundance of food for not only their immediate community, their members and those families, but everybody around. And this church, this HOA in Scottsdale, any other commercial properties, city properties that we can work with throughout this year, throughout 2026, will serve as the pioneers of what's possible in the Phoenix area. Because I promise you, Phoenix and most cities have not seen what we're able to do in cities like this. Maybe they've had some sustainability initiatives like, oh yeah, you know, the city's planting more trees. Okay, that's fine. They're not watering them right. They're not pruning them correctly. Anyway, this is not to vilify cities, because cities do the best with what they have. But what I'm really excited about in 2026 is the opportunity to, like I said, educate and also just physically transform. I specifically set out to avoid creating a nonprofit that's like other nonprofits. I wanted to create an earned income charity, meaning we earn our money from services and goods. Not that there's anything wrong with pure education, educational programming, things like that. Not at all. And there's some fantastic nonprofits in the Phoenix area and beyond that are doing that. But with my background in tech, my background in entrepreneurship, I wanted to build something that is sort of a more tangible service, a more tangible good. So I've learned a lot. 2025 was also learning a ton about legal structure, about governance structure of charities. We've rebuilt our board, and going into 2026, we've got a much stronger board, much more intentional, involved board. And we know so much about how earned income charities can function, the advantages and benefits that they can leverage for the community, how to pay ourselves. Yeah, the financial legalities of like offering you a tax incentive for donating. Anyway, so 2025 was about a lot of learning, a lot of systems building, and those will continue into 2026. But now 2026, it's about exploding. It's about exploding our impact throughout the Phoenix area. We've got some really cool events coming up. We're gonna be much more visible in the community. I'm going to continue producing content like I have been for the past few weeks on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube Shorts. I'm going to start producing some longer form content. We're going to be launching a podcast. It's going to be co-hosted by Clint from Galaxy Gardens. We're going to interview some really cool people, like Jack from Epic Yard Farm. Like, if you haven't heard of the Phoenix Food Forest Initiative yet, Chris Macy for the past few years has been building a neighborhood food forest in his neighborhood in these public city easements that otherwise serve absolutely no purpose. He is a force of nature, and he's one of our board members now, and we want to duplicate the results that he's getting in his neighborhood and that we've contributed to with our design and our planting supervision. We want to replicate his success to other neighborhoods, to other parts of the world. Again, remember the core objective here, the mission, is to create self-sufficiency in these existing communities. Harvesting our own water, harvesting our own sunlight. I haven't even talked about solar in this because we're not really involved in solar, and solar is kind of its whole own industry that really exploded. We're trying to do that. We're trying to do what solar did for rainwater harvesting, for growing food, etc. And yeah, at the end of the day, I want to create a world where you and I are not stressing about bills. We're not stressing about what's in our food or the price of our food. Oh, it's getting more expensive, or there's all these chemicals and poisons in it. That's what I want to change in the world. And I want to do it in the cities. I don't want you to have to go move your family out into the boonies, out into the desert, just to be able to get away from it. We can actually do this in our cities. We can transform places like Phoenix into eco paradises, like this, by not being afraid to steward land that doesn't necessarily belong to you, by asking for forgiveness, not permission. People care about this. Every city employee, the tow truck driver, when these guys try to tow my car here, the tow truck driver who came, every city employee who's been out here to look at this space, they love what we're doing. They do not want this to go away. And if you know of spaces near you, if you know of like vacant land that's just sitting there baking in the summertime, talk to me about it. We can probably do something with it, create something really beautiful and magical in a short period of time that we then turn and show to the right people and say, don't let them bulldoze this. Look at the outcomes that this is going to create for our community. Yeah, I think that's all I have to say. Thank you to those who have made it to this point in the video. It really means a lot. Thank you for witnessing the journey since 2023 through 2024 and 2025. We're now entering into our 4th year of operation. It's really crazy. And we know so much. We've learned so much. Oh, another cool thing that I'll mention is that I think I might be getting involved with the management of a Facebook group called like Arizona Citrus Rescue or Arizona Citrus Exchange, something like that. The creator of the group has moved away to Oregon. She was looking for somebody to help manage it. And if I'm able to join and you know, as an administrator, as a moderator of that group, then that will tie in really nicely to how this whole nonprofit even started. You know, like I said, homegrown foods right from the get-go. I was knocking on people's doors in East Mesa asking if I could buy the citrus off their trees. And they were laughing at me and telling me to just take it for free. And we started taking the citrus to the farmers markets. And then we discovered these properties in North Mesa that used to be entire citrus groves where each house still has 5, 10, 50, 100 orange trees, grapefruit trees, lemon trees on their private residential property. And they have to pay somebody every year to come and clean all of that fruit out of the property, because otherwise it takes way too much work to clean it out, or you just leave it and it makes a huge mess. And so we got into that line of work, and yeah, citrus itself is like maybe the biggest homegrown food asset in the Phoenix Valley right now. That's why I started with it. And my friend Susie had shown me the light with citrus, but we can go so much farther than citrus. I mean, the quantity of olive trees, of pecan trees in this Phoenix Valley is absurd. There's a guy in West Phoenix, Ron Mantini, who makes his own olive oil. He just goes, I think he's in West Phoenix, maybe he's in Chandler. He goes around town, harvests olives off of trees, park trees, wherever he can find them, because he knows they're not getting put to use. They're just getting sucked up by the landscaping crews and sent to the dump. He harvests dozens of pounds of olives and makes his own olive oil in his backyard. Cactus Kelly, I haven't even mentioned Cactus Kelly down in Ahwatukee, who is probably Phoenix's largest single producer of mesquite flower, mesquite bean pod flower. Not to mention prickly pear fruit, saguaro fruit, which she harvests with permission of the native peoples of the land that she goes on. These are the pioneers of the homegrown food ecosystem. We need more. We need people like you who are passionate about this to join forces, to get involved. I suck at like volunteer coordinating stuff. I'm trying to find somebody who wants to volunteer to coordinate volunteers. I know how to build products and services and market them, so that's what I do. But by the end of 2026, I hope that we will have transformed more than one church, more than one HOA, more than one city-owned property, more than one privately owned prescriptive easement that can't be used for anything else. We certainly will have transformed more than one private residential property, and yeah, be 1 year farther down the path of creating self-reliance, soil regeneration, freeing you and me from this hamster wheel of going out and having to get a job to earn income to pay for the roof over the head and the food on the table and the water and the electricity going through the pipes. I haven't even talked about natural building. 2026, I plan to learn a lot more about natural building materials. Things like adobe, things like rammed earth. The third branch of our nonprofit, Fertile Grounds, was started with the intention of learning how to essentially do land flipping. So finding people who kind of just want to get rid of their land and would take a low offer from a cash investor just to be rid of the land. We wanted to learn how to do that and offer them not only that cash price, but also the delta, the difference between the cash price and the fair market value of the property, to give them that difference in a tax deduction, which puts money back in their pocket, a lot of money back in their pocket. That's a community service that we can offer as a tax-exempt entity, a charitable organization. We did not do a good job of getting into the land business in 2025. And in 2026, my hope is that we will do a much better job of getting into that business, specifically what I want to do with fertile grounds. And if you're interested in this, hit me up. I want to identify parcels of land that are either not buildable for one reason or another, or that the owner, whoever it might be, wants to see something beautiful done with it. And we're talking, you know, there's land outside of the valley for sure, but there's also like infill lots, which are like, you know, lots of land within the city that just never got developed. There's these prescriptive easements. I'm really interested in the concept of of natural building, not only because it can last way longer with way less maintenance than traditional building materials, but also because I've heard this notion of off-gassing, especially in new builds. When you have lots of synthetic materials in a new build, what I've heard is that these materials are putting out chemicals into the air, and you're essentially poisoning yourself living there. And if you can smell it, then maybe you know what I'm talking about. But anyway, rammed earth is very interesting to me for these reasons. It's also interesting to me because if you have a piece of land that's graded pretty much flat, or it's not graded in the most advantageous way for natural passive rainwater collection, water storage into the soil, then you just, let's say you have a flat piece of land. You show up to the land, you're like, we want to build a house. First, make sure that you know where the house is going to go, what the orientation and why, according to the sun path, the winds at different times of year, etc. And according to the rest of the system, what makes the most sense? Where should we plant trees? Where should we be putting perennial vegetables? Where should we be putting annual vegetables? If we're doing a market garden, where should that go? You know, factoring in all of the elements of a homestead design. But then ultimately, the cool thing about rammed earth, about natural building materials, is that you're pulling the materials from the location directly. So you're not having to ship in a bunch of lumber. You're not having to ship in, you know, these synthetic petroleum-based materials, et cetera, et cetera. And again, this is me speaking from a very uneducated perspective, uneducated on natural building just yet. I'm gonna have a couple company owners of local natural building companies on the show, on the podcast this year. But the thought that I'm trying to get to is that you have this flat piece of land, you know you want to build a natural building on it, and you know that you can get the resources, the earth that you're going to ram from the land itself. And so you might as well excavate your basins, your rainwater harvesting system exactly how you want it, and then utilize that dirt for the rammed earth. So that I'm really interested in that for that reason, and I plan on getting involved in it in 2026. What I would love to do is become the company as a whole. You know, we have these different services, but I would love to become the name in like plain patch of dirt to thriving Eden oasis. I would love to be the household name for that. Oh, you're talking about you want to buy some land and homestead on it and be fully self-sustaining in the desert, right? You got to go with Permascaping, or you got to go with Fertile Grounds. I don't know. We may like end up making Fertile Grounds the name of the nonprofit itself. Who knows? But I want to be that name. I want to be known for taking nothing and growing a paradise out of it that can house people. I haven't even talked about the housing crisis, about building shelter for populations in need. Rammed earth, natural building, these city easements, these unused properties have a huge potential for helping people get back on their feet, especially when paired with growing food directly on the land, tending to the plants, tending to the earth. So that's it. That's the vision. I'm really excited for 2026, and I hope you'll join us. I hope you'll get involved. I hope that you will be a 1% or more better steward of your own land and of other people's lands than you were in 2025. I hope to be an even better steward of land, of wildlife, of the earth than I was in 2025 and prior. Because if we each do that, if we each put some percentage of our focus into living more in harmony with nature, we will become more self-reliant. We will become less reliant on commercial corporate systems of food, of housing, of resource generation like water and electricity. We can be fully independent. Maybe not necessarily on each of our own independent properties with the block walls around them, but as communities, you and I can grow enough food, can store enough water, can generate enough electricity together. That's the point. It's not about, like putting blinders on and being independent, each of us, but building a new system that is owned and operated by us, by our communities, by our friends and families. So cheers to that. Thank you for watching this, and here's to an incredible 2026.